Good morning, Brampton. Thank you all for being here today. We've got a bit of an unusual morning this morning in that we have a very special guest who I know you're all very excited to see on stage, but he has a very limited amount of time for us as well, and thus I'm going to get our event started, and we'll have a few people joining us as my comments progress. But I'd like to say the VIPs are in this room right now, so we're going to get this event going, and we'll have a few more people joining us very, very shortly. For those who I haven't had an opportunity to meet before, my name is Jaipaul Massey-Singh. I'm the CEO at the Brampton Board of Trade. And on behalf of myself and the entire team at the Brampton Board of Trade, welcome to Visions for Prosperity, our brunch with the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario. Thank you. This event is part of the Board of Trade's commitment to fostering dialogue among our members, the community, and those making policy decisions that affect us all. And we thank you, therefore, for being here in support of that very important mission. The relationship between Brampton and the province of Ontario has never been more important than it is right now. As the third largest city in Ontario, one of the youngest and fastest growing communities in all of Canada, and a leading job creator nationally, Brampton plays a vital role in the province's economic success. And I may be somewhat biased in my role here at the Brampton Board of Trade. I would go so far as to say that in the years to come, Brampton will be the community that determines the province's success. And I'd go to argue further that this isn't a view that's just held here in Brampton, it's a view that's held in Queen's Park, where in just the past year we've seen announcements of transformative investments in infrastructure to support the development of our downtown, for funding in transportation and transit projects that are going to keep people moving, and as well as the commitments that have allowed us to break ground on a second hospital here in Brampton. But we know to fully unlock our potential, whether in the form of supports and regulatory changes to support our manufacturing, logistics, and food processing sectors during this time of trade uncertainty, whether it be the funding and resources that are necessary to strengthen the social safety net as our population surges, the supports we need in skills training to grow our businesses as well as meet our housing targets, or the reforms that we require to stabilize and grow our vital post-secondary institutions. I said second hospital earlier. What I really mean is we need the vital dollars as well for our third hospital and our cancer care center. And for all those reasons, yeah, that is deserving of a round of applause. There are many people in the room working hard on these projects. We're happy to be working alongside you, and we need this type of support as we move these conversations forward. And that's why I'm really proud today that the Board of Trade is welcoming Premier Doug Ford to Brampton. I'm excited to hear his vision for Ontario firsthand, given his mandate that his government was recently elected upon. But I'm also thrilled to be hosting the Fireside Chat that we're going to have with a number of ministers who represent Brampton and Caledon, allowing for some deeper discussion on how provincial priorities connect to our community. As we begin our program, I'd like to acknowledge where we're gathered here today on the traditional treaty lands and territories. Since time immemorial, Indigenous peoples have inhabited and cared for this land. And specifically, I wish to acknowledge both the territory of the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Ojibwa Chippewa people, and the land that is home to the Métis, and most recently, the territory of the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation. Specifically, we're gathered here today on the lands represented by Treaty 19 between the Crown and the Anishinaabe people, as represented as the Adjutant's Purchase of 1818 that ceded 648,000 acres of land that includes where we are today. As leaders, we're all bound and responsible for honoring the treaties in our communities, and that recognizing, regardless of whether we're new Canadians or those who have been here for several generations, that we're fortunate to have the opportunity to occupy this land. And as we gather here today to hear about the plans for growth and expansion in our province and in this community, I encourage you to remember that responsibility and ensure that we demonstrate gratitude to be in a place of such opportunity, as well as a commitment to work and live on this land in a manner that gives respect to its first inhabitants by engaging them in dialogue, even as we build for the generations to come. Now, we have a lot of important folks that I know you want to hear from today. Those of you who've come to Board of Trade in events in the past know how much I love being at the microphone and hearing my voice, but there are more important voices to hear today. And before I get there, however, I do want to ask to remind you that if you want to learn more about any of our speakers, follow our program, or learn more about the Board of Trade in general, we do have an online program available for you. If you look on your table, there is a QR code. If you scan it, it'll take you to a little guide that'll walk you through all what's happening today, as well as telling you more about the folks that you'll be hearing from. It's on the screen there as well. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge that events like today would not be possible without the support of our generous sponsors, and I'd like to take a moment to recognize the following. Our presenting sponsor, Maple Lodge Farms, Our platinum sponsor, CN, our gold sponsors, the Brampton Honey Badgers and Sheridan College, our silver sponsors, Clorox Canada, Coke Bottling Canada, Dynacare, Greenwin, and Toronto Pearson, and our event sponsor, Livecast, and our media sponsors, Y Media. We can please get a round of applause for their amazing support. The work that we do here at the Brampton Board of Trade, I believe, has the potential to be transformative for our community, but we can't do it without the support of you, and that comes in the form of your membership, it comes in the form of your support by attending events like these, and it comes in the support and the very powerful support of those sponsors who make events like this possible, so thank you very much. As we move forward in our program, as I said again, we've got a lot of amazing people, and we've got some really tight timelines today. I'd like to ask to the stage someone who's been a tireless advocate for our city and a driving force for Brampton's growth and progress. Mayor Patrick Brown is a dynamic leader, a champion of economic development, and a passionate voice for the people of Brampton. Under his leadership, our city has continued to rise as one of the most vibrant, diverse, and fastest growing communities in this country. Whether it's at Queen's Park, in Ottawa, or as it seems increasingly internationally, or around the council table just here at home, Mayor Brown is a respected figure who consistently fights for the resources, recognition, and opportunities that Brampton deserves. So please join me in welcoming the Mayor of the great city of Brampton, His Worship, Patrick Brown.
Well, thank you, Jaipaul, and I gotta say, what an event you put together, the Board of Trade. A full room right here on a beautiful day, talking about Brampton's prosperity agenda. Thank you for the passion that the Board of Trade and Jaipaul in particular brings to supporting our business community, our job creators in Brampton. A round of applause to Jaipaul, please. Now, what an honor for us to have the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, here with us today to talk about that prosperity agenda, that vision for our city and our province. And I have to say, at no time in our province's history can I remember a relationship this close with the city taking on big, ambitious projects. You know, if you had said 7 years ago that we would be having a tunneled LRT, our second hospital, a med school, a cancer center, they would have said, you're dreaming Technicolor. But this is all underway. It really is extraordinary. The fact that the Premier lived in Brampton, I think adds to a special appreciation and a special friendship with our community. The fact that the Ford family has a long history with Osler, I think helps as well to understand the great men and women that work in Osler. And I know they're here today. Thank you, Osler, for the big projects that you're embarking upon with the province of Ontario. But there's many things to love about the Premier. I should note we have the Health Minister here too. So you don't build the hospital without the Health Minister signing off. Thank you to the General. And you don't build a tunneled LRT unless you've got a Transport Minister who's okay with tunnels. So thank you, Prabmeet Sarkaria. But what I appreciate most about this Premier is that he's really available 24/7. I know our regional chair, Yannicka's here too, he'll say the same thing. You can text the Premier at 11 o'clock at night and say, this business is in trouble, they need help with this issue. Or this housing project is in trouble because of this red tape issue. Doesn't matter if it's 6 a.m. or 11, he'll call back and say, we're going to three-way someone else and we're going to fix it. I just can't believe that as the Premier of the province, he takes on the biggest issues, but also the smallest issues. And I think the reason that the Premier continues to do better and better is because those that see him work appreciate him most. And in the city of Brampton, we certainly appreciate him. I think that's why every MPP came back to Queen's Park with a bigger mandate. I see them all, they're all here today. But this is a track record of success that we get to celebrate, and then we're in the midst of transformational progress. And so I come here today grateful that we continue to do great work together. I hope when the Premier comes, he's going to get an enthusiastic welcome from the chamber members. But to officially introduce the Premier, we have today's event sponsor, a great company, and that is Michael Burrows, CEO of Maple Lodge Farms. Its success began in Brampton in 1955. It has grown into Canada's largest chicken processor, recognized as Canada's best managed company since 2010. Michael, please join us on stage to introduce the Premier, and thank you for creating so many jobs in the city of Brampton.
So I'm just going to check, is the Premier ready to come on? Fantastic. Okay, so it's my pleasure to introduce the 26th Premier of Ontario and the MPP for Etobicoke North, Doug Ford. Previously a successful businessman with Deco labels and a passionate advocate for the people as a Toronto City Councillor, Doug Ford has served as Premier of this province since 2018. I've publicly recognized Premier Ford for his true leadership qualities. The Maple Lodge Farms chicken processing plant in Brampton, the largest in Canada, was deemed an essential service during COVID. And we decided to offer to vaccinate all 2,500 employees on site to ensure they believed our workplace was a safe place to work. The Premier made a few calls on our behalf, and within days, we executed the first of 3 on-site vaccination campaigns, achieving very high vaccination and attendance rates. We were the only major chicken plant in Canada that did not shut down for a day during COVID. Thank you, Mr. Premier, for truly making a difference to our employees. Earlier this year, Doug Ford won his 3rd successive majority mandate, running on a platform to protect Ontario workers, businesses, and communities in the face of tariffs and economic uncertainty that we have not experienced in our lifetimes, and to make Ontario the most competitive place in the G7 to invest, to grow jobs, and to do business. The Premier is also the chair of the Council of the Federation, that's the Premiers of Canada, yet another demonstration of his true leadership qualities. Please join me now in welcoming Premier Doug Ford.
Boy, well, thank you so much for the warm welcome, and you know, so nice to be back in Brampton. And Michael, thank you for that very kind introduction. And Jaipaul, thank you for leading the Brampton Board of Trade. You both show incredible leadership, and we're very, very grateful. I'll tell you, it's wonderful to be back here in the city of Brampton, which I lived here off Clark Boulevard when I first got married. I can't even remember, 38 years ago, but for the first 5 years, and I just love Brampton, and I always say it's like my second home here. I brought along some all-stars. There's quite a few all-stars in this room, but I brought along our great all-star team. My great Deputy Premier and Minister of Health, Sylvia Jones, Minister Sarkaria, Minister McGregor, Minister Williams, all these folks except Sylvia, they're all part of Brampton too, but you're part of Peel. And PAs, Brian Saunderson and Sharif Sabawe. And I also want to give a big shout out to my friend, Mayor Brown. He is an incredible mayor. I always say there's 444 municipalities. If I could duplicate Mayor Brown 443 more times, I'll tell you, I think the province would run a lot better. And he's he's made Brampton boom. You know, you see companies coming here, you see people moving here to live, and he's created that environment for companies to come here and thrive and prosper and grow. And You know, Mayor, you talk about 413 and everything. He was instrumental. We don't do anything without talking to the mayors, and no matter if it's the 413 or the hospital, which I saw Frank Martino, Dr. Frank Martino, the CEO of Osler. Thank you, and your whole team, Frank. You're doing an incredible job over there as well. But again, Mayor, thank you for your partnership, and there's a long list of items. I'll be here for another half an hour if I name everything that you've done for Brampton, but what an absolute champion you are. Friends, I don't need to tell anyone here that we're living in uncertain times. President Trump's tariffs are taking direct aim at Ontario's economy and our workers. That's why our government is moving at lightning speed to protect Ontario, to cut red tape, unlock our resources, and make Ontario the most competitive place in the G7 to invest, create jobs, and do business. We want to build a stronger, more resilient economy so we can protect Ontario from President Trump's tariffs and anything else that comes our way. We are an economic powerhouse around the world, in Canada and in North America. And I always say, we don't have to take a backseat to anyone, and we sure the heck don't have to take a backseat to President Trump. He gets up there and he starts talking, we don't need Canada. Well, he needs Canada and the people need Canada. And always make sure that we differentiate from the great American people versus President Trump, because there's one person that's doing that, and that's President Trump. I talk to endless Americans on a daily basis. I spent 20 years in our Chicago and New Jersey facility. You know, they're frustrated. Even Republicans, no matter if they're like governors, and matter of fact, I'm wearing the governor's tie. We had Governor Kemp from Georgia up, and he was saying the same thing. He doesn't agree, and he's a staunch Republican. Senators, Congresswomen and men don't agree. So I have confidence over the next 27 days, we'll be negotiating a fair and free trade deal. And I got to apologize ahead of time. Being the chair of the Confederation, we have a meeting at 12 o'clock with the premiers and the prime minister, just to tell everyone what's going on, where we're at, where we're going moving forward. But I can assure you, we will fight like we've never fought before. And if he continues with the tariffs, then we'll start slapping more tariffs on them. You know, I always say Canada, just think of Canada, we buy more products off the US than Japan, Korea, China, UK, and Germany combined. And that's why I always remind our counterparts that Ontario alone, if it was a standalone country, and I never recommend that, if it was a standalone country, we'd be the third largest trading partner in the world to the United States. We buy a tremendous amount of products and goods off the US, up to over $500 billion of two-way trade. That's a massive amount of purchasing power. But what we're doing to protect Ontarians, first of all, the government of Ontario, Ontario Public Service, we buy approximately $30 billion of goods, and I'm sure from a lot of companies in Brampton. But on top of that, that's even more powerful than the OPS, is what we do in infrastructure, which I'll get to because I've just gone off track. And I always say the person that has the toughest job, Jen, my teleprompter person, because I'm all over the place. But just hang in there, Jen. I'm going to get back to the script here. On a roll right now. But what really matters is the $200 billion of infrastructure that we buy. And, you know, before the tariffs, everyone was happy. We keep moving on and everything. And then when this happens, it's an eye-opener for all Canadians. It's an eye-opener for governments across our province. So even though construction may be a little slow, when I have the governors come here and they fly over, they couldn't believe the amount of cranes, not only in Toronto, but the GTA. We have more cranes in the sky than 10 of the largest cities in the US combined. And what do those cranes use? They lift steel beams. And I didn't realize we have 3 massive steel companies here, actually more as well, the other manufacturers, but we don't make steel beams. It was shocking. So now we're giving incentives to companies to start manufacturing steel beams. or the steel rails that our LRTs and our trains go on. We're going to onshore everything. I was speaking to some folks from Coca-Cola here. No matter if it's Coke or Pepsi or Molson or Labatt's or the craft breweries that's buy 150 million cans, I couldn't believe it. We ship aluminum down to the U.S. 65% of their aluminum that the U.S. uses comes from Quebec. But what happens, they put a 25% tariff on the way back, 25% on back into Ontario, and I'm thinking, why aren't we making our own aluminum cans? So we're giving incentives to companies to come here and start manufacturing our own aluminum cans. And if you add up everything, no matter if it's tin cans or aluminum cans, it's $1 billion industry. You know, President Trump can't see the forest beyond the trees. And what I mean by that is he's losing business. A tariff on Canada is a tax on Americans, simple as that. You buy anything with steel products down there, the cost has gone up 16%. High-grade nickel, and I always emphasize high-grade nickel, and 56% of their high-grade nickel that they use in their military, in manufacturing, and in their aerospace, it all comes from Ontario. We ever cut them off nickel, it'd be a disaster on energy, too. We power 1.5 million homes and businesses, and right in New York State and Minnesota and as well as Michigan, they need our energy. We're leaders in energy in North America and around the world. But folks, to do this, we're tearing down trade barriers between provinces so we can unlock a true free trade across Canada. People didn't even realize we have an actual Canadian Free Trade Agreement, and it was so outdated, so ridiculous, we could not ship a bottle of wine from Ontario over to BC. Sounds crazy. But now we're leading the charge, Ontario is, we're tearing down the barriers. That's going to add $200 billion to our economy, increase our GDP by 6%. And we're investing record amounts of supports for our workers, including by increasing our skills development fund. We did a skills development fund at about $1 billion. We increased it now to $2.5 billion to help workers get the training and experience they need for good paying jobs. And we're also unlocking our vast amount of critical mineral reserves in the Ring of Fire and across Northern Ontario by cutting the red tape that has held us back for too long. I'll give you an example. Right now, it takes more than 15 years to get a mine approved in Ontario. That's the longest in the world. It's crazy. Layers of bureaucracy with the federal government and other areas. We have to get the shovels in ground. I had a call about a month ago from a big mining company, and they were investing $500 million, $500 million into Ontario, and he called me up. He said, Doug, well, I'm going to tell you, I've been 8 years at trying to get a permit. And I said, what seems to be the problem? He says, well, I have probably another 7 years to go. I said, that's ridiculous. I said, what are you trying to do? He says, we're doing boring holes, test boring holes. And I'm thinking they're bringing big excavators. And I said, well, how big is this? He said, about a 4.5-inch diameter. I said, you've got to be kidding. And he says, oh, by the way, I'm moving my $500 million to Australia because I can get it approved in 2 years. Those days are done. They are gone. We've talked to the Prime Minister, no more dilly-dallying around on this and that, and they just run you around in circles. If we want to survive, we have to get those critical minerals out of the ground. We have to refine it here and get it moving across the entire world. I always say to my colleagues, I'm heading out to Alberta to talk to Premier Smith about signing off on doing a pipeline right across our great country. And our critical minerals are equal, actually they're worth more than Alberta's oil. We could be the richest, wealthiest, prosperous jurisdiction anywhere in the world. We just have to get those critical minerals out of the ground and get them out to market. But with our country and our economy at risk, we have to do better. That's why we're working with the federal government to speed up approvals and get shovels in the ground faster. We want to unlock the incredible opportunity that our critical minerals can provide, especially when it comes to bringing new jobs, investment, and opportunity to First Nations and Northern communities. In fact, We've invested more than $3 billion to support First Nations involvement in these projects so they can become true equity partners and create new opportunities for future generations. We're also investing to make sure critical minerals mined in Ontario are processed right here in Ontario and end up powering products made in Ontario factories by Ontario workers. And of course, we're increasing our plan to build infrastructure, as I mentioned earlier, to more than $200 billion so that we can keep workers on the job and so we can keep up with the incredible growth we're seeing here in Brampton and right across our great province. Right now, congestion on roadways is costing Ontario, are you ready for this figure? Just per year this is, over $56 billion every single year. That's why we're investing $30 billion in roads and highways, no matter if it's a 413 or the Bradford Bypass or Highway 3 or 1117, 401 East, West, and 400. We're pouring money into infrastructure. And $70 billion in public transit to fight gridlock and to get people moving once again. We're building, as I said, 413 and Highway 401 tunnel and the Bradford Bypass. Folks, the 400 series highways will be at capacity, including the 407, by the way, in less than 10 years. The 401 is already at full capacity. I drove by the other night at midnight. It was jam-packed, and I'm thinking, where are all these people coming from at midnight? So we have to make sure we're visionaries. You know what, a lot of governments, a lot of politicians, I'm not a politician, I'm a business guy, by the way, but anyways, well, it's true. And government drives me crazy. And the worst place you could give your money is to the government. I'm telling you, it is. No matter municipal, federal, provincial, we believe in a different theory. You can invest and spend your money a lot wiser than the government. That stirs the economy. That gets economic growth. We're building the Hazel-McCallion line, and we're extending and tunneling the line into downtown Brampton. And that was true leadership through our ministers, but also Mayor Brown. He lobbied hard for it. Now, for the first time, we're bringing underground transit to Brampton. Thank you. And we're expanding two-way all-day GO service with trains arriving every 15 minutes or faster on core parts of the GO train system. And thanks to Prab Sarkaria, our great Minister of Transportation, a Brampton boy, he's pushing transportation across our province. We also know that families are worried about the impact of tariffs on their household budgets. That's why we're working hard to keep costs down. We're saving transit users $1,600 every year with one fare. We axed that terrible license sticker fee, and that's over $2 billion, by the way. And just last month, we permanently cut the gas tax and took tolls off Highway 407, the part that we own out east, but we're negotiating. We'll take a look at that 407. But the most important thing, we keep going with the projects that we're moving on, and that's the 413 and the Bradford Bypass and the tunnel. And we're continuing to invest record amounts in the services of people and counting on including nearly over $60 billion in more than 50 hospital projects across the province, and one great project right here in Brampton. Just this past March, I was thrilled to see shovels in the ground for the new Peel Memorial Hospital expansion, which our government has supported with a nearly $47 million investment just for the planning and early works. And again, Mayor, Minister, and of course, Frank, Dr. Martino, and your whole team at Osler, you're doing an incredible job. We're building this new state-of-the-art hospital. We'll connect that rapidly growing Brampton community to the care they need closer to home. And of course, Brampton will also be home to the new TMU Medical School, which will train doctors and nurses right here in the community. And Mayor, I think you got this figure, was it been 100 years since anything's been built in the training of our docs? But wouldn't this be great? So young students going to high school here decides that they want to become a doctor, and they go to TMU, and the waiting list was about 5,000 people, but we're building on making sure we get more young people into the healthcare sector. And so they go to TMU, they graduate, and then they work at the new hospital in Brampton. That would be an incredible story, and that's our goal. This is a small part of our plan to protect Ontario. Folks, I have many jobs, but my number one job as Premier and my number one job for all my ministers and my colleagues, I'll tell you what it is. It's to protect you, protect your families, protect the jobs, protect communities and businesses, and I will not spare a penny to do that. We're going to make sure we protect absolutely everything, because we're going to get through this, and we're going to come out more resilient and stronger than ever before. We're creating new opportunities for growth and job creation, and we're making record investments that will support our economy and keep our province moving. This approach, this plan to protect Ontario, is the best way to protect our workers and our communities from tariffs and economic uncertainty, and from anything else that might come our way for decades to come. We're fortunate to live in the best province, in the best country in the world, and I look forward to working with all of you to protect Ontario and Canada. Again, I want to thank each and every one of you, and may God bless the people of Ontario. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you again to Premier Ford for making the time. Thank you all for joining us today. As I shared at the beginning, we're kind of juggling the program around to make sure that we got the maximum time with the Premier on stage, and that resulted in me skipping a few pieces along the way that I just want to touch on really quickly now. And one of them, most importantly, is to acknowledge the many people who are here in the room with us today before we continue on with our program. And now there's too many certainly to call out individually entirely, but I just want to give you a sense of the makeup of the room. Many of you commented on how full this room feels, how big this room feels today, and what perhaps you don't have an appreciation for is how well it captures the diversity of that is Brampton and the breadth of the folks who are involved in raising this community forward. So I just want to acknowledge and thank you for being here with us today. My board of directors here at the Brampton Board of Trade, and just hold the applause, we'll do it all at the end because there's a lot of folks. The board of directors at the Brampton Board of Trade, so many business leaders within our community, some folks here who have laid the foundation, you know who I'm looking at, for the community that we live in today, some who represent some of Canada's best known companies who are here with us today and biggest brands, and many of whom you, the job creators and industry drivers of Brampton today. We have so many municipal and regional leaders here with us today, both elected and staff that are here, and thank you for the time and the work that you do. We have some folks from our visionary post-secondary institutions, not just those that are in Brampton, but many of those who look to Brampton for students, for that young talent, as they develop the leaders of tomorrow. Thank you for making your time to be here today. We have innovators and entrepreneurs from our many incubators who have made the time, who really should be working on their businesses right now to be here with us today and make that time. We have representation from our exciting sports teams. We have so many from our non-for-profit and social sector who do the vital work that goes unnoticed and unsung in our community. We have folks from our critical first responder community here as well. And we have so many, as the Premier touched on, our brilliant healthcare providers. Thank you. Let's acknowledge all those amazing people and yourselves, quite frankly, for being here and spending time with us today. Additionally, the Premier did mention a few folks, but there are some specific people I would like to call out and thank you for making time for us today. And quite frankly, so you're aware who you're in the room with, and that's we've been graced with the attendance of some very distinguished individuals here today. And again, it's a long list. We'll hold our applause till the end, but these are some very special people I want to make sure we're recognizing. The Honourable Sylvia Jones, Deputy Premier and the Minister of Health, representing Dufferin-Caledon. Honourable Primate Sakaria, the Minister of Transportation, representing Brampton South. The Honourable Graham McGregor, Minister of Citizenship and Multiculturalism, representing Brampton North. You know, I like how the Brampton team seems all got each other's backs. I like this. Yeah, the Honourable Charmaine Williams, Associate Minister of Women's Social and Economic Opportunity. My apologies, Minister Williams. MPP and representing Brampton Centre. From Brampton East, Hardeep Singh Gariwal, Parliamentary Assistant to the Assistant Minister of Transportation. From representing Brampton West, Amarjot Sandhu, the Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Infrastructure. Representing, and that's just our Brampton crew. And then beyond that, we have from representing Mississauga, Aaron Mills, Sharif Sawabi, the Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Labour, Immigration, Training and Skills Development. Representing Simcoe Gray, Brian Saunderson, the Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade. Additionally, we have with us, representing from the regional level, the Regional Chair, Nando Yanika, from the City of Brampton, Mayor Patrick Brown, also joined by some of his colleagues, Harkirat Singh, the Deputy Mayor and Councillor from Wards 9 and 10, and Regional Councillor Gurpratap Singh Tour, representing Wards 9 and 10, and also the Chair of our Economic Development team here at the Brampton Board of at the City of Brampton. That's how closely the Brampton Board of Trade and the City of Brampton work. We just kind of interchange the names at some point. Also, some of our great colleagues from the Economic Development Office, led by Denise McClure, the Director of Economic Development and International Relations. And then finally, that's just the Brampton locals. Beyond that, you know, in our room with us today, representing the town of Caledon, Regional Councillor Christina Early, Regional Councillor Mario Russo, and the Councillor David Sheen. From the City of Mississauga, Councillor Alvin Tejo. From the town of Orangeville, Mayor Lisa Post. From the Township of Centre Wellington, Mayor Sean Waters, and then finally many representatives from the Ministry of the Attorney General, Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Agribusiness, and Ontario Sport. So please, a round of applause for these amazing leaders who have made the time to be here. And the reason I wanted to take a moment to draw the names of all these individuals out, it was twofold. One, because I truly appreciate the time that your attendance here represents and the commitment that represents, not just to what's happening here in Brampton, what's happening here provincially. But for those of you who are attendees, members of the Board of Trade, guests, folks who just came to check out, you know, what this was about today and hear from the Premier, an opportunity to recognize that you're part of a very special room and part of a very special conversation here today. And these are the types of events that the Board of Trade would like to pull together and create conversations for our community to rise together. So I share how big a room this is, how distinguished a group of individuals we have here today, for you to recognize you're one of those people and you're part of this discussion and you're part of what's happening here today. And as we move into the next phase of this event and start digging deeper into the issues, you know, I want you to be, you know, knowing that your input went into these questions and what we talk about on these stages today are a piece of information that we hope you take with you back to what it is that you do, because we're looking to you to help us do the work that we do here at the Brampton Board of Trade. So thank you for helping me get this back on track. I appreciate that. Thank you. And with that, I'd ask if you could please turn your attention to the screens as we bring up our next sponsor.
Quite the entrance. Yeah, my colleagues, I hadn't seen the video, my colleagues told me, you're gonna get a surprise when you see the video, so yes, I'm quite surprised. Thank you, good afternoon. My name is Gabriel Lagunes. I'm the Director of Marketing for Intermodal International at CN. Thank you again, Premier Ford, for his insightful remarks. Today, it is my pleasure to represent CN and our 24,000 women and men that service the North American economy on a daily basis. CN is a proud member of the Brampton Board of Trade and a sponsor of today's event with such honorable attendees. Further to Mr. Premier notes, so that everybody knows, CN heavily invests in Ontario to build and maintain a world-class supply chain network that created environment for economic success that the government has been working tirelessly to advance. Just this year, we recently announced $600 million in investments across different maintenance and infrastructure development. One of them is the construction of our Milton Logistics Hub, which is set to be operational in 2027. As we continue this important conversation and look forward, we now have the opportunity to bring the Premier's message home to Brampton. To help us do that, I am pleased to welcome 4 senior members of the Cabinet who not only serve in critical provincial roles, but who also represent Peel Region's voice at Queen's Park to participate in a Fireside Chat with Brampton Board of Trade CEO Jaipaul Massey-Singh. Please join me in welcoming the Honourable Pramit Sarkaria, our Minister of Transportation and MPP for Brampton South, the Honourable Sylvia Jones, Deputy Premier, Minister of Health and MPP for Dufferin-Caledon, the Honourable Graham McGregor, Minister of Citizenship and Multiculturalism and MPP for Brampton North, and the Honourable Charmaine Williams, Associate Minister of Women's Social and Economic Opportunity and MPP for Brampton Centre. The Fireside Chat is a chance to put the Premier's remarks into a local context and to hear directly from those working every day to shape Brampton's future within government. Each member of the Cabinet here speaks to several priorities, including transportation, healthcare, multiculturalism, and diversity and gender equity. We'll also be drawing on questions submitted by members of the Brampton Board of Trade that reflect the priorities and ambitions of our business community. Please join me in welcoming our panel.
Thank you, ministers, all for joining us today. I know there's a lot to talk about, and I appreciate you making the time to be here with us and share your thoughts with all those who are attending. There's a real appreciation on behalf of our community for your openness and willingness to engage in dialogue today. So with that, I'd like to dive into it because there is so much to talk about. And perhaps to start off, ask a question about, perhaps the biggest issue that's facing us at the provincial level right now. And I'd love to hear, I'll throw the question out in a generic way, and then I'd love to hear from each of you how you feel it intersects with your area of responsibility. And that's to kick us off around Bill 5. And right now, Bill 5 has received royal assent, and has significant implications for Ontario's economy, some real opportunities to reduce red tape, to fast-track projects, and specifically through the designation of special economic zones. And I would love to hear from your perspectives as we think and digest the remarks from the Premier. The conversation we want to facilitate is that of, what does it all mean for Brampton? So when we talk about those economic zones, whether they're talking in the form of major transit infrastructure projects, our hospital healthcare infrastructure, what it may mean in terms of our workforce and implications there as we bring newcomers in our community, or what it may mean for those who are not traditionally part of our community or those who have been left out, and how we create new opportunities. I would love to hear your perspectives from each of you, what you think Bill 5 means for us here in Brampton.
All right, I guess I'll start. We'll go right to left. First off, thank you to everybody who's in the room here today. This is a wicked turnout for a Brampton Board of Trade event. And just Jaipaul, the energy you brought in, your whole team, VJ, Sonia, like the production value, everything else. Like, this is a big, diverse room from a lot of different sectors. And I got to call out there's one elected folk that we didn't acknowledge, and that was Matt Mahoney, who's the Mississauga councillor for Ward 8. He was here with the Peel Police Service Board. And Peel Police do a great job keeping us protected every day, so we just had to shout out Matt for being here in that role as well. Bill 5, I think, was born out of a realization that the status quo on how we do projects doesn't work. The Premier talked about it, 17 years, 15 to 17 years to build a mine. The capital that would come to Ontario is going to somewhere else. And really what we've tried to do as a government is realize, if somebody is willing to put their money into the province to invest, to create jobs, to grow their business the same way as many people that are here. The question shouldn't be why are they allowed to. The question should be how can we help them do it. And with Bill 5, we've really given the government the ability to designate provincial, national projects of significance, and really get out of our own way to make sure that these projects get done. When you talk to people out in the community, and many of you talk to your customers or even amongst yourselves, you know, I think everyone's sick and tired of politicians talking about projects that they're doing. They want to see us get it done. And with Bill 5, well, I heard a little bit of a clap for that. Oh, we'll take that. Because at the end of the day, you know, we get elected to do a job, and that's to represent residents, that's to grow the economy, make decisions, and those decisions can't take, you know, 15 years to make. You know, if we're going to protect something, whether it's ecosystem, species, cultural resources, the way that we protect things is by protecting them, not by delaying a project for years while we figure it out. People elect us to make decisions, and Bill 5 really gives government that ability in line with things that are happening in British Columbia. The federal government has a very similar bill. I think the people have spoken the situation that we're in. We got to get our economy moving. We got to get shovels in the ground. We got to get things done. Bill 5 helps us do that.
I appreciate that, and I definitely want to hear from each of your colleagues as well. But as you spoke to that, Minister McGregor, I think you just touched on something that I'd love to everyone else to maybe work into their thoughts as well. Is that one of the questions that we've heard about Bill 5 is that we are trying to achieve expediency, and we all can agree that reduction in red tape and moving things forward quickly is something that we want to ensure happens. But that there's been some criticism or concern, perhaps, that there may not be as much opportunity in the way that the bill is may be rolled out to create consultation, to create opportunities for engagement from the communities that may be impacted. So again, I'm going to turn it back to the group, and I'd love to hear, but I'd love your perspective on how your government is going to ensure that we are going to continue to hear from those groups who do need to be consulted as part of the process. Because I respect where you're coming from, Mr. McGregor. You know, we want to move quickly. We don't want protection of folks to come at the expense of projects getting completed. But we also want to make sure that those special interests do get protected along the way as well. And perhaps Minister Jones?
Yes, thank you. And it's great to be here today. So for me, this is about opportunity. You know, we've seen the uncertainty that musings from the White House lead to. And we can't in government, and you can't in business, plan for that. So we have an opportunity here to actually say, we're going to take more control over how we invest in the province of Ontario, how we encourage and partnership with people to invest in the province of Ontario. And to your point about consultation, I mean, there's many municipal leaders in this room. Consultation does not begin and end before a shovel gets in the ground. It is an ongoing, continuous opportunity to engage with your community, to engage with the individuals who are interested and impacted, and making sure that through the entire course of the build, of the expansion, the community is involved. I think that we have an opportunity to focus and make sure that the people who are actually engaged in projects and interested in projects are ones who are impacted. What we are seeing, frankly, too much of, is people who have no skin in the game in terms of they're not in the community, they're not in the region, and yet they are the ones that are blocking projects. That needs to stop. And I believe that the engagement has to happen at the local community, and it will continue after the shovels are in the ground and we move forward on projects that are frankly critical to our entire well-being as a province and a country.
Absolutely. Great answer. Thank you for having me here. It's good to be here. The Minister for Women, Social and Economic Opportunities. So I will be speaking predominantly on how Bill 5 and everything is going to impact women. So, you know, I find whenever there are major significant events that happen in society, women are the most severely impacted. Those women who are financially independent, even those who are financially insecure. But right now with our government, we have been investing significantly in development for women and opportunities for women to get into entrepreneurship, for women to get into different sectors that we're underrepresented in. And we're seeing more women take the opportunities that are available to us. And I always want to say to women, get in where you fit in. When we are looking to spend over $200 billion in infrastructure development, we need people to build the physical infrastructure, but also to fill those communities that are going to expand. And if I look at the trades, for example, you know, every piece of a house, every piece of a building has to be manufactured somewhere. It has to be brought into the job site to be developed. And there are some amazing women who are looking at their business skills and saying, okay, I think I can be the owner or start a business in garage doors or, furniture or whatever may have you. Get in where you fit in. And Bill 5 is providing significant opportunities. And with our investments in Futurepreneur, in Starter Company Plus, in the manufacturing infrastructure development, there's so many different products that our government has. Please seek out and contact us and contact your local business entrepreneurship center, because there are ways that we can help support you. And even when it comes to consultation, we are the only province that has the Indigenous Women Advisory Council. We created that advisory council in 2021 or 2020. And this brings in Indigenous leaders from women, leaders from across our province. We meet 4 times a year, and we discuss the issues that are impacting Indigenous women. Consultation is happening within the women's ministry, even within just myself and meeting with different women who are business leaders and business owners. It is good for business to have women in leadership. It is good for business to have women on the job site. And there's many studies that show it. So I say, women, get in where you fit in, and we can make sure you get there.
Well, thank you, first of all, to everyone that's here today. I think my colleagues have really summed up a lot of the good points. But ultimately, I think the one that I'll echo is the fact that we're in a different era right now, post what's happened south of the border. And so when we bring in legislation like Bill 5, when we bring in other legislation that you've seen over the past couple of weeks, it's a necessity for Ontario to stay competitive across not just south of the border, but internationally, for us to move quicker, to be able to adapt and respond much quicker as well. Dealing with some of the major infrastructure projects in the province, whether that be the 413, the Bradford Bypass, the Ring of Fire, or just building transit. It's very difficult. It can be very disruptive. But we've seen, on our streets today, the amount of gridlock there is because we haven't invested in previous governments haven't invested in the necessity of public transit, of highways, and so we've got to get shovels in the ground. I think there's been enough talk. We received a large mandate for the 3rd time under this vision of building Ontario and getting shovels in the ground. And ultimately, when we look at large infrastructure projects, when you have uncertainty in the economy, there's no better way to get people back and the economy moving than to invest in infrastructure, to invest whether it be hospitals, schools, highways, and public transit. These are good paying jobs that get people back to work and ultimately provide a great asset for the government into the future. So I think the time it's a different era where we're in right now, post what's happened. It's been a good wake-up call for Canada. It's been a good wake-up call for Ontario to speed everything up and get shovels in the ground, get people to working. But ultimately, all of those investments in infrastructure provide a much better quality of life for the residents that are living here. So it has a great public utility once it's completed, and a great purpose for the city and for the province of which it's being built.
Thank you each for your thoughtful replies there. And what I'm happy to hear is that there is this interest in this ongoing commitment to consultation, and this recognize that we do need to balance out the desire to move quickly with the desire to engage. And what we don't want to see is the way it was described, it being an impediment. What we also don't want to see is a process that feels like people are being left out, that then results in other types of delays, whether it be through the courts or other places. So with all that said, happy to hear your commitment to that. I just want to remind an organization like the Brampton Board of Trade, one of the reasons I touched on the diversity and breadth of the businesses represented here. I hope that we have the opportunity to work with you to represent our community as part of those engagement conversations as we go forward and make sure that these voices are being heard.
Now, with that said, Minister Sakari, if I could touch back on your answer a little bit, the spirit of the question I asked initially, and in fairness to you all, I threw a lot at you, was to talk about the special economic zones. And you did touch on some specific projects that are really close to Brampton, would have some real impact to Brampton. Can you share, to what extent you can, the process of special economic zone designation? How can we as a community work with the various ministries you have, and in particular, Ministry of Transportation, Ministry of Health, to prioritize some of these projects here in Brampton and ensure that we are able to move them as quickly and as definitively as possible?
Yeah, and I think there's probably two ways to answer that. One is what legislation we have put in place to help speed up some of the projects that we already have in Bill 5 in it of itself, which is really going to, I think, specifically look at the new projects that are coming down the pipeline, potentially others. Well, we're in the process of developing those regulations. As you say, consultation continues, whether it's through the ministries that are leading it. But if I look at something like building transit, for example, we just designated this past year the Her Ontario LRT into a Building Transit Faster Act, which then allows it to become a higher priority through planning processes and really being able to get shovels in the ground and move quicker. And so it circumvents some of the processes of studies and others that delay some of these projects. Likewise, with the 413, we've introduced multiple amendments through legislation that will allow us to get shovels in the ground and get building on that really important infrastructure piece. But ultimately, it's all about speed for us, is how do we reduce the speed at which it takes to get a shovel in the ground. And I think the large economic zones will also really focus on that. When you look at large mega projects that will, if you're talking about mining, for example, and the Premier gave the example of, digging 4 feet boreholes and taking the individual 15 years to get a permit, that's just not acceptable. But being able to have a process like they do in the United States, you heard President Trump during his campaign, pledge, if you invest $1 billion into the United States, you're going to have your permits within 30 days. How do you compete against that when you're in, south of the border, when you've got New York, you've got Michigan, you've got Ohio bordering you, and places where other international companies are looking to invest? We'll never sacrifice from a health and safety perspective, but there are ways to ensure that and move forward on that quickly that reduces some of the duplication in our processes.
Mr. Jones, is there anything you wanted to add as it pertains to healthcare projects in that area as well?
Yay, we're moving forward. Listen, there's so many pieces in the healthcare space where, listen, I'm absolutely thrilled with partnering with William Ulster that we're moving forward on the hospital project. But in alignment with that, we have TMU for the first time in September bringing students in Brampton to be able to train in Brampton. And that's worth celebrating. And I have to call out Mayor Brown and the region of Peel, because as a result of partnerships and leveraging existing facilities, we were able to actually start that project sooner. That's the kind of work that we can do when we work together. I have to call out Sheridan College, again, a college that never had the opportunity to train RNs and nurses is now training nurses in Brampton. The statistics show that where you train, where you do your interns, where you have your placements, you are far more likely to actually continue and decide to live and work in that community. So these truly are investments that are going to be game-changing for the city of Brampton, and all of those pieces together, whether it is a new hospital, whether it is a new opportunity for medical students, for nurses to be able to train, work, live in Brampton, is going to be a wonderful opportunity for your community as it continues to grow, to actually make sure that your homegrown talent is able to live and stay here. And I'm thrilled about it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You touched on a key idea there, and that is, the what can be achieved when we start working collaboratively as opposed to oppositionally. Another big piece that is obviously a big conversation item right now is that of interprovincial trade. and how we can start working and how you can start working with your colleagues at the federal level, but also with your colleagues across the country to facilitate more trade and break down barriers that exist here in Canada. The Premier, cited the example of, the inability to buy a bottle of wine, across the country as an example. What do you see happening coming down the pipeline? There's been some very aggressive timelines set federally toward that. What do we think that means for Brampton? And in particular, there's a few of you represent portfolios in particular where there's shortages of workers and healthcare being one of them as an example, where we see real opportunity. Those who have been marginalized, we see real opportunity. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, not just on how you think this legislation is going to roll out for Ontario, but what it means for workers in Ontario.
Yeah, well, I'd like to start with actually what we've already done. So when I became the Minister of Health 3-some years ago, I sent a directive to the two licensing agencies, the College of Nurses and the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario. And I directed them to quickly assess, review, and ultimately, when appropriate, license internationally trained and educated physicians and nurses in the province of Ontario. Absolutely amazing results. And I give credit to those two licensing organizations for stepping up and doing that. So as an example, many of you who have family members are familiar with the system probably have heard about it takes a year to get licensed. It takes 6 months to get licensed. Well, guess what? In the province of Ontario, if you are a physician who have a clean record, no issues, you are getting licensed in the province of Ontario in less than 3 days. For nurses, it's less than 10 days. 18 months ago, our government brought forward legislation called As of Right, which meant that wherever you were practicing in any Canadian jurisdiction, if your license, again, was in good standing, you were able to immediately come to Ontario and begin practicing under your old license while you transferred it to Ontario. We have been able to make those changes because 18 months ago, we knew that we didn't want to poach from other Canadian jurisdictions, but we certainly didn't want to put up a barrier if you wanted to live and work in Ontario. And now, of course, most recently, the Ministry of Labour has expanded that opportunity, particularly for individuals working in skilled trades. Why do we care if a Red Seal electrician from BC wants to come to Ontario? Why are we putting up barriers to say, you need to do some extra training? So that legislation came through in the spring. And again, it's an opportunity to expand on what has worked and how we can move it forward. And Premier Ford talked about it. We can't solve the uncertainty that is happening out of the White House. What we can solve is fix the internal trade barriers that are happening in Canada. And frankly, it shows leadership because we can't go to US governors and senators and say, make it easier to trade with us when we have trade barriers externally. And I have to give a shout out to Premier Ford when he signs agreements with Manitoba, with maritime states and others coming forward in the near future, it shows that we're serious about eliminating these interprovincial trade barriers, and it gives us credibility when we go to our largest trading partner, the US, and say, we're serious, we want to do this, and look what we've done already. And I'm proud of that work.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Williams, I'd love to hear. I love your insights on what you think that means for those creating new opportunities, perhaps, for those who've been marginalized historically.
Well, I was really excited when we passed this bill because I was asking the Minister of Education, I said, so wait a second, does this mean we can recruit ECE workers in Ontario? And it does. So we have childcare centers that have spaces, but they have no staff to fill it. So we have a shortage of ECE workers here in Ontario. And so this, once again, creates another great opportunity for recruitment to say, we need ECEs, registered ECEs here. We've also made it possible for childhood educators to ladder and become registered. So we're investing in making sure that we have adequate childcare, because we know that is a major barrier to many men and women being able to work confidently. And I'm a mom, I have 5 kids. I know it was a challenge at the time. We didn't have the opportunity for having 23% of our childcare costs waived as we do now, but you know, it's a real issue. And so when we look at opportunities across the country, you know, the conversation about women and being able to invest in grow businesses across the province, even take best practices from other provinces when it comes to helping women reskill, upskill. There are some great programs in Alberta, and being able to say, look, we want to look and explore on what we can do here in Ontario. So I'm just excited about the opportunity. Next month I will be in Nunavut, I think it is, somewhere very far away where I'm not going to see darkness for like 4 days, for the federal provincial territories meeting on the status of women for Canada. And those meetings, it's a really great opportunity to talk about, you know, how we can make opportunities available and accessible for women. And one of the conversations we'll be having is, how can we work interprovincially to make business opportunities available and accessible to women? So I'm looking forward to furthering the conversation and seeing what this is going to mean. I can't wait. I think I will say it again, women, get in where you fit in. And you know, when we also look at business opportunities, don't be discouraged by seeing somebody else doing something you're doing. Like, have you gone through a bread aisle in the grocery store? Right? There's so many different options and choices. So if you're a woman and you want to get into the sector where you might think, oh, somebody else is doing it better than me, no, there's opportunities for you.
Appreciate that. I'd like to get some McGregor energy back into this conversation.
All right. I love that guy.
So building on the comments your colleagues have shared, what are we doing, what can we be doing to align these opportunities with labor market needs, immigration policies? How can we be working at the various levels of government to make sure we're getting newcomers and new Canadians into this mix?
So I think the biggest thing is engagement, right? So we have everybody in this room, diverse set of sectors. I think what we've seen in Brampton be a real success for us is the partnership with the municipal government, the provincial government, but also our partners. I mean, I see Peel Police Board is here, Sheridan College, TMU, William Osler, Coca-Cola. Thanks for all the great bottles, great branding to have Coca-Cola bottles bottled in Brampton. You know, a Brampton product.
By the way, it's a raffle thing. If you have the bottle with your name on it in front of you, there's a prize for you.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't actually know
okay,
that, but it sounded cool.
Yeah. I was gonna, what'd be really impressive is if they show up with, they got to show up with a Jaipaul Coke bottle.
Everyone's checking their bottle though now. Look at that.
But it's engagement, right? And you know what the premier's really led us to do is realize that government works for people, not the other way around. And he holds us to that standard as MPPs, as members of the cabinet, where the way that you get good ideas is by talking to people, and really with this idea of instead of thinking why, why not? Why can't Sheridan College graduate registered nurses in Brampton? Why can't TMU start a new medical school, even though it hasn't been done in 100 years? Why not do it now? We need doctors in Brampton. We've got lots of people that could fill that role. We just need to train them, right? Why can't we build a new hospital? Why can't we move things along more quickly? Why doesn't Brampton deserve a bypass highway, the Highway 413, when everyone else got them? And I missed all the protests for when other communities got their highways. Why not? And I think when you engage with community, when you go with an open mind and think about how do we serve people better, that's really what you're seeing our government try to do to the best of our ability. The recent tariff situation is obviously on top of mind for everybody, and the Premier's shown incredible leadership, taking the mantle up, really being Captain Canada for us, and hopefully that gets resolved. But we also have to wake up and realize that we shouldn't be so vulnerable in the first place. If we can get projects approved faster, going back to the mining example, there's $1 trillion worth of critical minerals under the ground. It takes 15 years to get to. Australia does it in 7, right? 2 years for permits, they do it in half the time. We're the worst province in Canada, right? Saskatchewan does it faster than us. Other provinces do it faster. We can get better, and the way that we do get better is by listening to community, engaging with people with diverse sets of opinions, and then I think what everyone wants, and certainly what I've heard my residents want, is government to show leadership and make a decision, stick to that decision, and get some damn things done. And the folks on this stage, we're here to do that.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Minister Sakari, we haven't heard from you. I haven't given you an opportunity for a moment. We talked a little bit about these priorities, getting people to work, getting projects faster. You've got a lot going on in Brampton right now, from the transit perspective, transportation perspective, and we're pitching you more. How can we figure out how we're prioritizing investments in Brampton? We've been very lucky the last couple of years that I touched on to get some major announcements, some major funding, but we know we need more here in Brampton. How do we work with you to prioritize projects appropriately?
Yeah, I think, look, as we've been talking about, there's great collaboration between both the province and the city, which has helped with alignment. And I think the city has seen some pretty incredible progress since Premier Ford has been elected to build it up. And a lot of that focuses around transportation. I think if you look at just last year, the data that came out, Brampton is now larger in population than Mississauga. So it tells you the growth.
No, we can clap for that.
That's a clap. That's a clap.
Clap for it, yes.
It tells you the growth and the needs and the pressures that we face here. And oftentimes we've always talked about how we've felt neglected in the city of Brampton. And we've been really trying to change that with the investments that we've been making and to build upon some of that. So, I'm excited about not only the 413, the LRT that is going to transform how people move around in the city, but also all the way to a GO and the expansion and the incredible expansion that we're having. And I think, for GO Transit and GO expansion, when you look at it, not just, we can talk about the Kitchener line and what it means for Brampton, but what it means for the province is incredible. The ability to get into Union Station or to and from your home or station to Toronto on a 15-minute, and in many cases, we've already improved services significantly. There's a true impact to the quality of life of those people that are using that transit, and something that we're really, really proud of. So we need to continue building upon that progress. Now it's about execution. We've got shovels in the ground on some of those projects. How do we keep that momentum up? And I think one of the next big projects for the city is the BRT, which is the Queen Street expansion of transit, and how do we link that to all the way into the Vaughan Vaughan as well. And so studies are ongoing, design work is ongoing with respect to that. But better transit leads to better quality of life in our communities. We understand and appreciate how frustrated we are when we're driving and we're stuck behind a wheel. And I think that's been really captured by the Premier and the investments we've made across the province and across not just Brampton, but the Peel region, across the north, east, west. You go to Windsor, we've got significant investments there. You go to Ottawa, we've got significant investments there, and up north on Highway 11 and Highway 17. So we just got to keep the momentum going. I think we continue to work with our business community, our community partners, organizations like yourself, Jaipaul, and I think we'll continue that progress and see some significant changes to the city in the terms of how we move our productivity as individuals, because we can get to places quicker and faster. But we're really, really excited about what the future has.
Thank you so much. I know there's a lot more we could be talking about. We have only a short amount of time left, and thank you again for being so generous with your time today. Perhaps to sum up, I'd love to give each of you an opportunity. We've got a room here full of leaders, those who are your colleagues at different levels of government, those business leaders, community leaders here, and folks who want to be working toward a better community here in Brampton. So I would love to give each of you an opportunity just to sort of sum up your last couple thoughts. In a room full of leaders, a few hundred people here who want to be working alongside you to make a better community, what would you ask of them? How can we be working with you and your specific ministry to advance the priorities of Brampton, or Minister Jones, if you'll indulge us, Brampton instead of Caledon today, prioritize the needs of Brampton within your sense of responsibilities?
Look, I'll go first, and I'll just say, I'm lucky to be elected the second time, along with my colleague Minister Williams, to represent Brampton. Sarkari, obviously, a third term, and as well as Minister Jones. And I think, what we heard loud and clear was an endorsement that we need to get moving on big ticket infrastructure, and we need to get things done. And it's not lost on me. Not a lot of people even get elected once, never mind getting elected twice. It's a lot of trust put into me and my colleagues here by the people of Brampton. And whether it comes to big ticket infrastructure or investing in police or getting healthcare services or supporting businesses and just protecting the damn jobs from the tariffs and growing more of them. The support that we've seen from the community is not one that we take for granted. And we are working our backs off every single day to make sure that we get things done and make people's lives better here in Brampton. I think we're a big city that hasn't always acted like it, and we realize now in Brampton, we're bigger than Mississauga. We're steadily growing, and we deserve nice things, whether that's a new hospital, new highways, LRT, et cetera. We don't have to be apologetic about it. We can stand up and demand it, and I think that's what the residents have done. So my advice for the leaders in this room, everybody's a leader in some form or fashion. Keep engaging with us. We're making good progress, but we know that we've got more to do. My other colleagues will speak, but I just want to say none of us take the support that we have from Brampton for granted. We know that we have to go out there and earn it every day, and we want to do everything we can to make the city better. And we welcome everybody in this room to join us in that work.
Thank you. Minister Jones?
Thank you. Well, I'm actually going to share what I share with my ministry and my stakeholders every day, and that is make progress. So actually get some stuff done. Leverage partnerships, because we have a lot of talented people and a lot of talented organizations, and we don't have to do it all ourselves. We can leverage those partnerships. And finally, show progress. To the Brampton Board of Trade, thank you for hosting today's event. And if anybody has a Sylvia Jones Coke bottle, talk to me at the back of the room.
Thank you, Minister Jones.
I just really want to say thank you to all of you in the room. You are making our economy run. You are the ones who have the pulse on the ground. You know what works in industry. We rely on you for insight and understanding on what we need to do. So thank you for that. And as the Minister for Women, hire women. It is not just good for your company. Your revenues are higher when you have higher women, and not just on the front line, but at your leadership table. You have less WSIB claims. You have less money spent on retooling machines if you're in the manufacturing sector. It is just good for business all around when you have women at the table. Not only are you helping your business, but you're also helping your community. When you hire women, you are increasing women's financial stability, and a financially independent woman is a safer woman. And so we need you to see women as assets, not just in your business, but in your communities. Thank you.
I'll just echo my thanks for each and every single one of you, not only for being here to support Jaipaul, but also to support the vision of the province and where we're going. And, I think if we continue to have that engagement, if we continue to work together, Ontario, will be unstoppable on the world stage. Just before everything happened with President Trump and continues, we've attracted over $70 billion in our mandate to international foreign direct investment into this province because of the new change that the Premier has brought. And a lot of it can't be done without many of the success stories that are in this room, and showcasing those to the world about, from our education sector, post-secondary school sector, to our manufacturing, to the incredible people that live here. It's truly one of the best places to be in Ontario from an opportunity. We want to continue to build upon that, but ultimately none of that is possible without the support of industry and without the support of organizations such as the Brampton Board of Trade and many others. So we look forward to continuing this engagement, continue working with each and every single one of you. The opportunities are endless, but we're really, really excited about what lies ahead, and look forward to taking on those challenges with all of you guys behind us and behind the Premier as well. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you again for making the time to be here. One of the things I really do appreciate and I'm very grateful for is not just the accessibility we've seen among our elected officials here in forums like this when you're on a stage and answering questions, which I appreciate, and by oversight by me, I should have shared, the questions that were generated were brought in through submissions and input from our members. So it wasn't just, what Jaipaul wanted to talk about today, but, really what our membership wanted to hear about. So I appreciate making time for this, but what I've also been impressed by and appreciate is attending events like this and making yourself accessible and being able to have interactions with people in an unscripted, open way, and just being able to hear and share your points of view. So thank you again for making the time, not just for this, but just for being here today and being part of what I feel, an organization like this really contributes, is the opportunity for access in both directions for real dialogue to happen, and I appreciate your participation in that. With that, folks, if we could please get one more round of applause for our great panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much once again, everybody. That brings us to a close of our formal program for today. I want to thank again one more time the Premier and the Ministers for joining us. We get one more round of applause for them. Again, as I've shared, it's one of the piece of work I see so vital for an organization like the Brampton Board of Trade is to create dialogue. Thank you for coming out and being part of that today. We'd love to see you get engaged with the Brampton Board of Trade. Please follow us. We have links on LinkedIn, Instagram, if you want to see the great work we're doing. Please click the QR code here, follow what we're doing, get more involved in what we're doing here in the organization. We do also have a weekly newsletter that goes out, gives you the opportunity to learn more about what's going on. We have our blogs, upcoming events, and community engagement. And then finally, I just want to thank one more time our amazing sponsors. Maple Lodge Farms, our presenting sponsor. Thank you. One more round of applause for them. Not only sponsored the event today, but if you partook in the chicken that was part of the buffet this morning, that was graciously donated by Maple Lodge Farms. And among the things, if you exit the building, if you go out to my right, your left, directly in front now, is Maple Lodge Farms has brought by an Airstreamer. They have some new products in the form of an amazing chicken sandwich they want you to try. The Premier tried it earlier today, gave it his big thumbs up. Please make sure you grab one for the drive home. There's a little bit of a snack for you thanks to Maple Lodge Farms. Thank you to our platinum sponsor, CN. Once again, our gold sponsors, the Brampton Honey Badgers, Sheridan College. Our silver sponsors, Clorox, Coke Canada, Check Your Bottle, Dynacare, Greenwind, and Toronto Pearson. And finally, our event sponsor, Livecast, and our media sponsor, Y Media. Thank you to the staff of the Board of Trade. And please join us at our next event, July 8th at our town hall. And with that, thank you very much, everybody. We did it. Get back to work. All right.